There is a huge culture of food courts in Singapore.
Yeah.
Like hawker centers is basically, it's the base of the local culture. For you as a professional nutritionist, how would you rate the healthiness of the food in hawker centers?
Look, I think hawker centers, it's very cultural. I think there's a lot of improvements that could be made. I'm not going to pick one or the other, but I think the general health, when it gets to the oil quality and the fried foods, this is where there's a big problem. I think we all know that frying is bad, right? But the reason is because the type of oil that's being used is very refined.
Yeah.
For example, palm oil. Palm oil, naturally, palm is a very red, spicy, kind of hot fruit.
Yeah.
That turns into an oil. But you can take palm oil and make it and put it into an Oreo, right? But that Oreo is not hot, spicy, and red. So that palm oil has gone through so many conversions.
Yeah.
It's degummed, it's de-waxed, it's bleached, it's refined, it's heat treated. So we're using palm oil or vegetable oil or canola or ground nut. It's all of these super refined oils that actually that's really unhealthy because it creates more oxidative stress in our bodies.
Yeah.
So it's not that hawker food is bad because it's a hawker center.
Yeah.
I think it's because of the quality of ingredients.
What would be, let's say, the healthiest choice in hawker centers? What kind of cuisine?
I'd say either fresh or steamed.
Oh, maybe soup?
Soup could be, or yes, exactly. So again, it comes down to what is that soup made of.
Yeah.
Same with the steaming, right? But process-wise, I would say something fresh, something soupy, or something steamed. But again, it's what are you steaming? What are you cooking into soup?
Yeah. I'm curious how to find the balance. Like, I love hawker food, but I also try to stay healthy.
Yeah.
How to enjoy life and sometimes maybe occasionally go to hawker centers.
Yeah.
But still try to be healthy.
Yeah.
What would be your advice? How to approach it?
So my advice in general is it depends on where you're starting from. If you're someone who, let's say, already has high cholesterol, or you have hypertension, or you have diabetes, or some chronic disease, I think you have to be careful about what you eat a lot more than someone who has no chronic disease.
Yeah.
But my general guideline is that 90-10 ratio, people always love ratios, and I've heard 80-20, and for me, I'm like 80-20 is a B minus. Right? If you're an Asian, you're like a B minus is not acceptable.
Okay.
So 90-10 is an A minus, at least try to be above. But 90% of the time, I actually think people should be cooking at home if possible, right? Or you're choosing your vegetable, fresh foods, 90% of your plate. That 10% you kind of save for, or less, hopefully less than 10%, for those times where you're going out or you're making a choice that might not be as healthy. But the hard part is that, produce here in Singapore is quite expensive. Hawker centers somehow are able to make that. So it's a budgetary reason, right?
Yeah.
I think Singapore government could, more subsidies for local farmers, fresh ingredients. Maybe that would help change the economics. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to be mindful for sure. And I almost kind of think that having that 90-10 as a quota is also helpful. So if I'm 90% of the time, I'm focused and I'm conscious about the food choices I'm making.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 to 10% of the time, you can be less conscious, right? So,
Yeah.
but again, everyone is individual, and I say like your unique fingerprint. If I'm sitting across from you and we're discussing your health, I've got to know where you're starting from. Like, what are your diagnostics? Do you have cardiovascular risks? Do you have, kidney risks? Do you have diabetic risk? We want to see where are we starting from, and then kind of maneuver.
What are the most under the radar unhealthy habits that people do and they don't really realize that they're doing it?
Ultra processed foods, UPFs, or they're almost, UPFs are like UFOs. It's an alien product, completely alien. And these foods are marketed to us, to our children, breakfast cereals, right? So colorful, so enticing, addictive. I mean, like you can eat one bowl of cereal and then be hungry for the next, and next thing you know, you've had 5, or your child, right? So these ultra processed foods, eliminate them. It's hard to, because they're so pervasive in our environment. But I would say that is the biggest way to shift your health, is away from those ultra processed foods and move towards real foods. And if you want to talk about the science on why it's not only the artificial colorings and artificial sugars and sweeteners. I mean, they wreck your brain. The amount of, I think it's like 100, artificial sweeteners are like 100 times sweeter than normal sugar. And the processing in our brains and the mechanism it goes through, from aspartame goes to formaldehyde goes to formic acid. These pathways, I mean, formaldehyde, you know what formaldehyde is, right? It's that crazy weird, like, when you go to science museums and there's like a brain preserved or like a hand that's preserved, that's a toxic liquid, formaldehyde, right? Formaldehyde, in order to be safely processed in our body, we actually don't have a biochemical pathway to do that. But we have to convert it away from this toxic substance. And it uses so many B vitamins or C vitamins. I mean, so it's almost like it's a drainer of all the good things that we're trying to, to do for ourselves, in eating nutritiously. It almost sucks up all those micronutrients. So those artificial sugars, the ultra processed foods, again, to go back to the chemistry of it, it's called advanced glycation end products, AGEs, which I think is it's aptly named. If you have a lot of foods with AGEs, you will AGE a lot faster, right? The ages will age you. And AGEs are a product of sort of heat-treated foods. When you bake bread and you smell it, that's gone through a heat treatment. Or when you have a steak or something and you grill it, that burning, that flavor aroma, those are actually AGE products. So you kind of want to balance, am I eating a lot of AGE products? Or, and that your immune system then has to manage that. So when it gets to a point where you have quite a lot of advanced glycation end products and your immune system, it's off balance. So there's a lot of chemistry that is super fascinating, but these ultra processed foods, it's just like this chemical toxic, right? Creation that food scientists are paid a lot of money for. I'm not the only person saying this, right? I think we all kind of intrinsically know that these foods are not good for us, but yet it's available. If you go to a supermarket, some supermarkets, the fresh section is very small. The rest of it is shelf life products. So, yeah.
Feels like 99% of people, like, they don't have healthy habits. They eat wrong foods.
It's actually not the individual's fault. It's actually the system.
This is the system.
It's our
definitely.
food system in the way that, I mean, like how, I don't know, like lobbyists or economics and all of that plays a role. So, I think if we were having this conversation and we were in another city, it would be maybe different about the food choices. But, in Singapore, we are lucky in that we have the access to fresh as an option, right? So as much as I say hawker center foods aren't great for you, you can still find some fresh options, right? And at least it's been cooked and it's prepared on a daily basis. Not every country gets that.
I mean, in the US, I think it's a big problem overall, like how people eat. I used to live there. I remember, like, I was a student there my first time in the US. I was fascinated with the endless refill. You have your Coke, and then it's a huge cap, and then I didn't have any money, so you just go to the refill endlessly. And it's like, wow, how much sugar I consumed back then.
Exactly, and that time it was all about, it's fine because it's calories in and it's calories out, right? That's all that people were worried about. So you Diet Coke, refill, abundance.
Yeah.
And I think now, especially with the functional perspective, we're realizing that calories in, calories out model is not working, and it's not working for anybody. Yes, exercise, super important, all of that. But now we're shifting toward this idea where actually quality really matters. What kind of calories are we getting, you know? So, because again, calories, it's this, I have this liter here, right? And I could say, hey Max, I've got a liter of fluid. It's 100 calories. You could say, okay, great. I could have water in here, I could have juice in here, I could have wine, I could have bleach for all you know, right? But would you want to drink that bleach? No, you wouldn't. So I think calories is a unit of measure. We have to respect it, and it's part of that framework, but we have to know what's in the calories, right? So yeah, but in the US, I think there is a really big problem. And I grew up in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is slightly more, you know, health skewed.
In California, it's a bit better.
A little bit better,
there
but still,
options.
with kids, you still, you know, at lunchtime, kids still want Oreos, and they still want other cookies. And I don't know if you ever saw these things called Lunchables. They were like these little squares and a little processed ham and a processed cheese. That was so popular. And I remember I would ask my parents, can I please have a Lunchable? And my parents were looking at me thinking, what is this, right? The Korean side of them was saying, this isn't
eat
food.
Kimchi.
Yeah. I can pack you rice and seaweed and kimchi, which now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much healthier.
Right.
But at that time, when you were younger, you wanted to fit in and have that American culture. So, but yeah, the amount of processed food that is it's like we're preparing for some like endless war that we're just going to have shelf life stable
Maybe
food.
we are.
I mean, I hope not, but yes.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.